Peruvian President Pedro Castillo could be experiencing literally his last days as a leader of the Andean nation following massive protests that he essentially decided to repress and solve with a pretty controversial curfew that actually made everything worse. We're talking about the typical mistake of an authoritarian leader that sees how the people goes against him, and he decides essentially to make everything worse by using violence. So it is important to point out that the protests actually started right after Pedro Castillo survived a second impeachment trial, just as we reported here on Newsweek a couple of days ago. The people decided to protest against him because of the political and economic crisis that the South American nation is experiencing, and a crisis that has essentially been pretty much exacerbated by a significant rise in gasoline prices. So once the situation started, Pedro Castillo decided to deploy security forces, prompting a lot of chaos, and violence in the streets of the most important cities of Peru, in a pretty horrible situation that so far has left 5 people killed, 5 innocent Peruvians killed. So while Pedro Castillo eventually decided to cancel this curfew, things actually got worse because he recently decided to restrict movement for 30 days in 23,000 kilometers all around the country. And he actually, in addition to this decision, he also ordered the military forces to help police officers to deal with the protests, which of course here in Latin America is the perfect recipe for chaos. This is not exactly new. This situation is not exactly new in South America. The fact that people decide to protest against a leader, against a president, against a government or a dictatorship, and the leader of the government or the leader of the dictatorship in question decides to deploy the military, every time this happens, everything ends in a bloodbath. And unfortunately, this could actually happen in Peru over the next few days. This could actually happen. So it is an undeniable fact that the situation could definitely get out of control for the Marxist-Leninist leader, Pedro Castillo. Considering his unpopularity, the latest polls point out that his unpopularity rose to nearly 80%, and Peruvian mainstream media are now calling him to resign ASAP. The most important media outlets, TV networks, radio stations, newspapers are all calling for Pedro Castillo to resign as soon as possible. Getting to this point, it remains unclear what is going to happen in Peru. Nevertheless, it is quite possible that he resigns given the widespread crisis that he actually created. On the other hand, it is important to say that this situation could definitely lead to another impeachment trial where he could get finally ousted. This situation could lead to a third impeachment trial that could end up destroying his presidency and getting him out of power, given the fact that the latest protests could actually convince many of the lawmakers who decided to vote against the impeachment to vote in favor. So this is a pretty delicate situation that Peru is living, and of course we will reporting everything about it on this channel. Reporting from Medellin, Colombia, Luis Orozco, Newsweek.